You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. On today's episode, we welcome back Levi from episode 614 to provide some updates on the Welden Spring area of Missouri. And what follows is a deep dive into how he's been communicating with Bigfoot, and really, maybe even summoning it. It gets pretty intense. So follow along and stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Levi again. Levi is an individual that we talked to back in, I want to say it was December of 2014. It's episode 614, so a while back. You'll want to hit that one to get all the intro information. Also, Levi was just on an episode of Sasquatch Theory, so if he sounds familiar, that is why. But we might be talking about some things that may not have been really gone into on that show. So just a little bit to go over there, but Levi, and also you're a lifelong outdoorsman and technical footwear product designer, so you have a very interesting way of looking at things. But welcome to the show again, Levi. How's it going, man?
Good. Yeah, thank you. Glad to be back.
Absolutely. I mean, we have some really interesting things to talk about today. The last time you were here, we were talking about Welden Spring, which is an area outside of St. Louis, Missouri, and just some really interesting things that you've been looking into. But it sounds like the crazy stuff has not really stopped for you. But do you want to give a little bit about yourself before we start getting into that update?
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Levi. I'm from Indiana originally, near Hoosier National Forest. I moved to St. Louis like 2 years ago for work. I basically make climbing shoes and trail, hiking, running, recovery shoes for the rock climbing industry. I also design pretty much anything that comes up on the docket, like, hey, we want to do this. Can you make a prototype? So with work, it puts me outside a ton, an absolute phenomenal amount of time spent outside. Hike very regularly to remote locations to test products, just constantly out in the woods at this point, which is pretty great. It's nice to have a job that kind of allows me to also be close to a full-time researcher to an extent. The two mix really well. So yeah, moved here. Had heard some interviews about Welden Springs, had checked some of the sites, Bigfoot mapping project, and, the BFRO data info stuff, and just said, okay, hey, look, it's a pretty cool spot. We might have something happen there. Let's go ahead and roll out. Have a extremely large interest in the UFO realm, classic saucer shape now to what is been turned into UAPs. I pull a lot of research stuff from that realm to try and come up with new ways of gathering data and evidence to an extent. Make a lot of really crazy things electronically to try to, take measurements or capture photographs or capture sound. So that's like the easiest way to explain all of it.
That's awesome. Welden Springs has come up a few times on the show, just some really weird stuff that happens in that area. Probably the best, I would say, representation of it is when we talked to you the first time. But you mentioned before we started that the weird stuff is still continuing to happen in that area. Would you be able to kind of fill us in with what you've been experiencing in that area?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So recently started finding a lot of potential tree structures. I don't want to say 100% that's what they are. They were, definitely made by Sasquatch. No one knows for real. I strongly feel that they are. I have a lot of photos that I can share as well. I was focusing on one main area that's kind of near the trail system, and started to try and branch out a little bit to some different areas that are close by. The area is massive. It's part of the August A. Bush conservation area, so it's a substantial plot of land where there are people around and in it, but it's not constantly populated. The town of Welden Springs is a little bit away. But yeah, so started focusing on different areas, and almost immediately had some really, really weird stuff just kind of pop up out of nowhere. For me, that really stood out was there's a large plot that's a plains area, has a couple lakes or ponds for fishing. But in the very, very back corner, you start to see the wood line. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll hike through the plains, see what's over there. The first time I went out, I found essentially a 4-foot tree. I'm not positive if it was an actual tree that was buried in the ground and growing, or if it was the top of like a branch shoved into the ground, and placed very, very deliberately and very precisely on that branch or tree, whatever we want to call it, was a deer skull. And the top of the branch pointed or ran through the lower part of the mandible and then out the eye socket. I know it's graphic. I apologize. This skull was bare white. It looked like it had been picked clean, like not processed, like bleached or whatever you would think or say, but very, very clean as far as, animal remains go. So I found this guy. It's at the very edge of the tree line, very end of the field, just kind of hanging out. So went out, took some photos, looked at it, and was like, maybe I should walk into this tree line. So looked for an opening or a game trail, found a tiny little game trail that I'm assuming deer had passed through. And almost immediately as I walked past the tree line, I noticed that like the area completely changes, like feeling wise for me. Being in ufology and like experiencing stuff in that realm, I kind of pick up like physically and mentally, can kind of tell like, oh yeah, this is probably a good area for whatever is around. Call it intuition or sixth sense or whatever. So yeah, walking this little cut, popping in the tree line, feeling completely changes. I look to my left and there's essentially what looks like a dish of foliage. So it looked like something had pulled down a ton of trees and branches that were, like potentially ferns or maple, like thick foliage, and then placed deliberately in a circle pattern. And then there was a tree that was pushed over into this circle pattern that kind of, to me, it looked like a ramp into it, like you would walk up into this nest area per se. So I walked up into the nest area and immediately noticed that all the foliage in the center is compacted down to where it looks like a bowl, like something that you would sleep in if you were trying to hide or didn't want to be seen. It's hard to know directly what caused that or what manipulated those trees and bushes and everything into that position. But given the location, I would bet very, very large amounts of money that it was not a human. That area is super thick with, it's just dense. They don't cut underbrush there. It's kind of hard to get to, but this dish, all of those pieces that were pulled in were dragged across the ground. Very few things looked like they were picked up and placed in until you got to the higher edge of this bowl. So saw that, was like, wow, this is really interesting. I've heard this in other reports. I've seen photos of this in, the Pacific Northwest, Canada, pretty much all over at this point. So I noticed that. I walked out and I turned right. And as I'm looking off into to the woods, I noticed a small tree structure that is essentially, I'm going to try to explain this as clearly as possible. It still is confusing without a photo. So it's two angled branches placed in an X, and it's leaned up against a tree. And then there's a crossbar that goes left to right through the center of the X. And then it's encapsulated by slightly curved sticks. So it kind of looks like an asterisk in a circle, if that makes sense. But it's leaned up against a tree. I have photos of this one as well. A lot of stuff woven in, pretty crazy. Had never seen one like that. I did notice, though, that it was relatively low. Searched the area for footprints, tried to find, anything that would lead me to believe that there was human interaction in this area making these things. Couldn't find anything. So I kept walking and was like, okay, maybe there's some other stuff. And then I found this. The best way to explain it is two vine bushes dragged in between two sets of trees, and then almost 3 feet off of the ground from one bush to the other bush are three woven strands of vine that run 3 feet off the ground from edge to edge. I checked to see if stuff was grown there, like the vines and everything. I personally don't feel like it is. I'm not going to say 100% that it is. It just didn't look like it was there naturally. It almost looked like something dragged these things from one set to another set and then took vines and then wove them together. I have photos of this too. So that's like maybe 50, 60 yards away. What was really interesting, though, was the location of that little 3-foot stretch. It spans probably 25 feet left to right. If you go 100 yards past it, there's a field that I always walk into. And in this field, 3 days prior to finding this, I was getting continuously whistled at. The da-da, like the two-tone high-low. And it was at night. It was during dark. It was like 9:30 when I started having this happen. And I was like, man, that's really crazy. I've never had whistling back here. I pulled out red light, white light, everything I could to try to figure out if someone was hoaxing or potentially standing there and messing with me. Couldn't see anything. So that's what led to trying to go back into those woods to see if there was something around there. I went back a couple days later, and actually it was like a week and a half later because I was on a BFRO expedition the following week. Went back, walked in the same way that I did, and couldn't find any of it. Absolutely, totally twisted in the woods. Can't find where these things were. I don't save location on photos because I don't want the information to be leaked via EXIF data or smart people that know how to track photos and stuff like that. So walked in, tried to find it, couldn't find it, but I ended up finding another set, and almost immediately started feeling really, really, really overwhelmed and sick. The week before on the BFRO expedition, I feel like I got hit with infrasound. We can talk about that after, but that following week went back to try to find this stuff, found new tree structures, and just violently sick, completely out of nowhere. Had, enough water, wasn't dehydrated, had not eaten terrible food that would, potentially lead me to throwing up or whatever. Found it, 10 minutes, 15 minutes went by, and it was just an onslaught of physical pain. Ended up having to hike out of the woods and just basically hit this field and just got annihilated sick. I can't explain how much I puked without going into detail. From that point to where my car was parked, it took me a good hour to get back to the car because I was just completely blasted, like could hardly walk at this point. I felt like something was trailing me at this time too. I was hearing things in the woods. I wear sound canceling headphones to try to drown out like all the disturbing noise so I can hear, potential footsteps or tree snaps or stuff breaking in the woods or weird sounds that are, not really audible to our ears without magnification. So yeah, walking back to the car, takes forever to get back to the car, hearing stuff constantly. And that's just kind of where everything started to get really, really crazy at Welden Springs.
Oh, wow. Man. So at this point, when you're getting really sick, you are out there by yourself, right? You pretty much go out there by yourself the whole time.
Yeah. So the only time I ever go with other people is if I'm on an expedition. I research alone all the time. Everyone tells me I'm crazy for doing so, but I'm not really worried about it. I can kind of handle whatever comes my way. But yeah, completely alone. Usually, obviously I tell my girlfriend, like, hey, I'm going out here. This is where I'm at. If you can see me on the map, that's where the car is. So someone knows where I'm at, essentially. But yeah, completely alone. No one's around. No one's helping. No one's, causing these feelings. It's just me and the woods.
Absolutely. So just in case there are new listeners, it's a really important thing he just said there, which is someone else should know where you're going, or you can have things with you in case stuff does go wrong. You can have things like a Garmin, InReach Mini 2, whatever, which you can push if something goes wrong. Or another thing, have you considered looking into, these are not sponsors, by the way. Have you looked into using Onyx to mark spots so you can find it later?
Yeah. So I use Onyx pretty much every day.
Okay.
Waypoints for me, especially when climbing or like hiking areas, like it's really important to try to find exactly where they are. I had marked the other two stuff on Onyx when I first found like the skull and the two structures. And when I went back, those waypoints were way, way off. Where I thought I had marked them versus where I was in the woods versus where I had marked them were totally different. And I followed, like, you can get a line to an extent, but it's still not like a direct location. That's kind of what made me a little weirded out too. It's like I had these waypoints marked on a map digitally and then also at home to back up. But when I went back out there, I couldn't find them. And it took me to a totally separate spot. I was maybe, hiking wise, 25, 30 minutes west of where I had found these two initial things. And when I went and looked later, when I got back in the car, I was like, man, this is crazy. I can't explain it. Like, I don't know how I was off that far from the course, I will say too, as soon as I got back to the car, like got in the car, didn't turn the car on, just sat there and was totally fine within 10 or 15 minutes. It was only when I was outside where I was having like these physical, just like absolutely terrible feelings. Someone had mentioned on Miguel's podcast in the comments, like radiation sickness or poisoning. I took measurements, absolutely nothing out there. That was like, I wanted to make sure because Welden Springs does have a history of munitions manufacturing, and they have a pretty large plot of uranium that's buried under this thing called the moon or the ecodome. So I always check when I go out there, but no readings whatsoever. So that kind of debunked that thought there. Yes.
So real quick, it also reminds me of how people will describe areas around Columbia River Gorge, or you have these like lava flows, a lot of like magnetic interference. And I wonder if it's something similar there. It just doesn't make sense where the points are not where you're expecting them to be. It's very, very strange.
Yeah, it's hard for me to explain it, and it's even harder to look at the stuff on a computer, not just on my phone, but look at everything on a computer and lay layers in and be like, this doesn't add up. It shouldn't have this much of an issue finding two small points where I know, like, very directly, this is the direction I walked in. I will say this, though. I always take two compasses, and they're always isolated from anything magnetic in my gear bag. I have a pretty extensive kit that I wear. It kind of makes me look crazy, which is okay. I got a lot of antennas that are popping up out of nowhere that are connected to different things. So people probably walking that see me are like, why is this human CB radio walking around with headphones on and staring off into the woods? It's probably pretty comical if you don't know what I'm doing. But that being said, I try to isolate those two compasses to where they don't pull magnetic interference from the devices. And when they come out to be checked, they always come out to be checked, and they're always in a separate hand. And I now pretty regularly, it's not every time, but pretty regularly, one of those compasses rotates 360 degrees constantly on its own. I thought it was defective. I emailed the company. They said, no, it's not defective. Here's a coupon, buy another one. So I got another one, and the same exact thing happens. I don't think it's the actual compass itself. I think that there's some sort of field manipulation. It's odd, though, that one does it and the other doesn't. And it's the same compass, but it's not all the time. Sometimes both of those compasses can be separated by, multiple feet, and on different sides, left side of the body, right side of the body, away from gear, close to gear, whatever. I've tried to systematically debunk anything that could cause this compass to rotate, and I can't do it. It's very confusing. It's hard to put a finger on what's causing it.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's to hear the things you're describing. I mean, it's definitely pointing in the right direction where, there is some activity there. You've got weird structures and your physical body being affected different ways. You've got the whistles, just some really weird stuff. Have you? I think I remember you saying last time that you had experienced where you were being paralleled in the woods. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the first couple times out there, in the previous episode, I talked about this spot that basically it's on the Lewis and Clark Trail. There's a portion where the trees, they basically just grow into a tunnel, and had just been like myself alone, my son and my mother and her dog. We talked about that in the last episode too. Same thing, getting paralleled as we're walking out. It happens a lot now. It's not every time, but it's wild too. Trying to isolate hearing with headphones versus like a parabolic microphone or whatever. It allows you, and I'll say this, these headphones are relatively cheap. Most people should be financially able to get a hold of one of these things. If you search really hard, you can find them for super cheap, like $10-15. They're just shooting headphones for firearms practice or whatever. But they work in a way that cancels, even if you're in the woods and you're close to the road, it kills the road noise enough to where you can hear much more than you can without them. So I'm able to pick up stuff pretty far away at this point if I'm just walking, because it isolates like the crunch of your feet. Like, if you're walking on gravel, it kills that. But yeah, still getting paralleled, still, I constantly feel like I'm being followed out there. Even if I'm just on a trail at this point, like that feeling of like there's something off to my right. You know, you get like the hair on the back of your head and neck stands up and you're like, okay, this is odd. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty regular occurrence out there.
That's extremely interesting. Has there been any weird, I guess you could say sightings of or occurrences where there's some, authority presence that doesn't make sense why they're there?
Yeah, that's also one of the constants that keeps happening, and it's escalated within like the past 3 months. It's gotten really bad. So the first couple times out there, I noticed that I will say this, there's a military base and there's an airport very close. But with that being said, there's a helicopter that flies relatively low, and it's always when I'm in a certain area. It's changed now to where it's circling areas that I'm starting to go out to that are a little more remote, that I don't know why they would know that I was there. That's the thing that really gets me. So first couple times, black helicopter, low flying, attributed it to the airport that's close, but being kind of tech savvy, I have a couple ways that I track any type of aircraft. We do this all the time in UFO research. You basically try to figure out what's flying and what its radio signature is, or whether it's transponding, or if it's a helicopter, if it's a private jet, if it's a private airplane, whatever the case may be. So yeah, I started noticing this happening, and then I was like, okay, I need to check this. This is odd. They should not be here at the same times I am every time. So listen for transponder noise. Can't find it. Can never, ever get a signal from it, which is super odd because they're required to fly and transmit with a transponder. No radio signal whatsoever. I have some pretty serious radio equipment that allows me to essentially get past all the scrambled stuff. The only thing that it has issues with, or I have issues picking up, is a digital signal, but I have some instrumentation that allows me to at least know that it's there and find some sort of correlating signal number to it. So can't find the helicopter, can't find info on it. I've made the calls to the airport and said, hey, do you guys have anything flying out in this direction at this time on this day? And every single time I've called, they said no. So it started just kind of flying like a grid pattern left and right. I know they can see me because I'm a dude walking in a field, and I'm usually there from pre-dusk. So if they show up earlier or someone sees me, they know I'm at least in the area. What gets really interesting though is when you start branching out and that same helicopter flies where you're at, but not where you were the night before, let's say. So it's almost like as I'm moving through Welden Springs area or Auguste Bush, I'm starting to get interactions with this helicopter, and I have no clue how they would know that I was there unless they're running thermal or there's some sort of sensor or whatever the case may be. It's hard to say, yeah, it's doing this regularly on its own for this reason. I can't find any info that would suggest that. Along with the helicopter, I started having a lot of unmarked and strategically parked and placed SUVs showing up. I walked out of a spot one time and was coming up to the parking area, and as I'm walking up, there's a black SUV, full blacked out, like no logos, pretty much everything's covered, and there's two gentlemen in blue. Keep in mind, this is kind of dark. I will say this, I was running night vision while coming up this trailhead, and as soon as I got to the trail or the parking lot area, I kind of hung back because I saw the truck and then I saw these two guys next to my vehicle. the smart thing to do is not to walk out and say, what are you doing next to my vehicle? It's to stay back and see what they do. So they left the truck. They got back into their vehicle. The vehicle was running, but no lights were on, no tail lights, no marking lights, anything like that. I waited and kind of hid because like I said, I don't want to have an interaction with these guys unless I absolutely have to. And they pulled off. I waited another maybe 10, 15 minutes to see if they would come back. And I felt like it was good, went back to the car, got in my car, drove off. And within, I would bet 60 seconds or less, this same SUV pulls in directly behind me and follows me all the way out of the nature preserve area or the conservation area on public roads all the way onto the highway, and they only peel off maybe 4 or 5 miles away, and they just kind of took an exit, but they were behind me the entire time. Didn't get pulled over, no lights. I'm assuming they ran my plates, but no interaction whatsoever. So now it's starting to happen more regularly where a black vehicle shows up or an unmarked vehicle shows up. I was in another spot just, I think, last Wednesday, and no one else is around. No one saw me drive in. There's no cameras that would, alert unless they're a game camera that's super well hidden. Pretty good at finding those. The electronic signal that they emit is really easy to pick up if you know how to do it and you have the right tools. So no clue why they would drive in. So I drive in, park, go do my thing, come back out, and this unmarked police car pulls up. It's an SUV, and I'm like, hey, is everything good? And they're like, you need to leave. And I'm like, okay, can I come back? Am I good to come back at another time? And they're like, yeah, you can. You just need to leave right now. Not out there past like what the designated curfew for the area is or whatever. But yeah, so now it's like we're getting this helicopter. Other people that I've taken out there have also experienced it. And then, these boys in blue, or the men in black, as we like to call them in ufology, are like, hey, your presence is here. Our presence is here. We're potentially watching you. What's the next move? So yeah, that's, sorry to go on that tangent, but it's very odd to me to have this type of interaction, like this.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's some wild stuff. It would be interesting if you were able to mark points on a map when or where these situations and interactions happened and see if there's any pattern that arised out of the patterns where they are.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I've not thought of that. That's actually a really, really good idea. Everything's recorded.
I was also going to point out for people that are new, this area does have a weird, you kind of alluded to it, it has a weird, what is it? I'm blanking on the word. It has a weird curfew, correct?
Yeah. So it's like 10 or 10:30. I can't remember directly, PM. And it's a hard out. Like, I've been in the car in the parking lot, just like, kind of jotting down notes or checking devices to see if anything was picked up. And I've seen park rangers or, someone's going to say that's not who picks them up or whatever, or DNR. Someone comes in of authority and will walk into the trails if there's 1 or 2 or 3 cars left over. And they pretty regularly are like, hey, it's sun up to sundown, it's kind of strict. Go ahead and get out of here. But it's odd to be the only one in the parking lot and walking out before the curfew is over or starts, and these vehicles that are completely unmarked, they're not DNR, they're not Forest Service, they're not, they're law enforcement of some sort, but it's hard to tell when there's no markings whatsoever. It's really odd to have those happen when I'm the only person there, or I'm the only person in the area, because the area kind of does cool off after like 9 p.m. There's not a lot of traffic.
That is extremely interesting. Have you brought other Bigfoot researchers to this area as well, or are these just random friends that you're bringing? When you said that you're bringing other people in here as well sometimes.
Yeah, so no researchers currently. There's a couple plans to pull people out there, but I mean, everybody's schedule is crazy, and I'm going so frequently. Like, most people are like, dude, there's no way. Like, I don't, you're like 20 minutes away from this spot. I'm an hour and a half away. The goal is to take more people. I will say this too. If you live in the area and you want to go and look around, or, like if people have questions, like, they can get a hold of me pretty easily. I at this point now, it's like the activity is so crazy. I can't do all the spots on my own. It's better to have other people come in, and I am totally willing. I know this is like the exact opposite of what everybody else does, but I am totally willing to take people out there and point them in locations, to an extent, guide them in and say, hey, look, like, this is what I'm finding here. This is what I'm picking up here. So yeah, not currently. I've taken a couple friends out there. They've all had really crazy stuff happen too. And some of them are like, we're not going. It's not even worth going because it's too weird or too scary. But the goal is, yes, to bring more researchers out that way.
That's fantastic. And if it's the same email address, I'll have that email address where people can contact you in the show notes or the description on YouTube. That's all right?
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, so the easiest way now, I kind of had to go official as semi-official, like the serious, most unserious researcher possible. So I started what's called the North American Research Center of Paraufology. I consider myself a paraufologist. I think all of this stuff is intertwined, and that term comes from essentially two guys in historically in UFO research that have a lot. I think their stuff is directly on track. So yeah, working on, a YouTube channel and social media and a website at this point, but I'll give you the email that so people can contact me, and you just drop that in the show notes. Yeah, that's pretty, like I said, it's pretty much an open invite.
That's fantastic news. I definitely will do that for sure. You also had mentioned that since we last talked, it sounds like you've started to go on BFRO expeditions. And I know that, some people might be aware that when you do go on those, there's some things you can't talk about, some things you can. There's things, NDAs, et cetera. So we want to make sure we follow those. But is there anything that you might be able to share from the expedition you were able to go on?
Yeah, I can, we could go over two things. So yeah, the NDAs are pretty strict. They're there in place for a reason. Some of the locations, they're public, and if you do your research, you can find them, but it's not on me to put it out there. So the first one I went on was just a few months ago. I want to say it was in April. Me going out alone and researching alone a lot. It's odd. It's an odd feeling for me to like step into a group that's going out and there's multiple people. This expedition had a pretty sizable number of people that were on it. But yeah, so first night pulled in really late to the camp. I was pretty far away from St. Louis. Kind of got there at the tail end of the evening. Talked to the wonderful director. She's in charge. She was like, hey, yeah, whatever you want to do, you can camp here. We'll go out tomorrow. Everybody wakes up. We do whatever. And I said, okay, cool. Just through like the small conversation we had before everyone went to sleep, I was like, hey, look, like I do a lot of stuff that, is to try to get a reaction. I use it a lot in UFO stuff. There's a lot of ways to make contact, and that's the most in-depth I can say about it. But I did pull one. I let her know. I said, hey, look, tonight at 1:30 or 1:40, one of those, 1:30, I'm going to try to use something that I use regularly to see if I can, maybe get a reaction. So everyone went to bed. I stayed up. I'm like essentially nocturnal. I'm up at night all the time. It's kind of a curse, but also great at the same time. So 1:30 hits, I go out, I walk away from the camp. I do this thing called a telephone. We talked about it on the last episode. I won't go into details. It's not for everyone. I will say personally, for me, it does a lot. The reaction to it is almost always very, very large. So I make this quote unquote phone call with the telephone. About 10 minutes goes by, nothing. And then out of nowhere, I'm laying in my cot, just kind of hanging out, waiting and listening. And I start hearing it almost sounded like two bobcats fighting, right? But it's really, really close, like within 50 feet of me. So it's super, super loud. I'm like, what's going on? This is really crazy. There's another gentleman that's parked close to me in his tent. He hears it as well. We both kind of get out of our sleeping quarters and, are shining flashlights. We can't see anything. There's like absolutely nothing around. And these sounds are like insanely loud. Like I was concerned that it was going to boil over into camp and just wake everybody up. So we're out there. No, we can't see anything. I'm like, do you see anything? He's like, no, I'm looking. He has FLIR and night vision, no heat signature, nothing showing up on night vision. I'm like, man, this is crazy. Okay, this is like, maybe this worked. Prior to that, I had heard some stuff in the woods it's on private property. It's across the road from where we were. And, just kind of getting like these sounds pretty crazy. And then the rest of the night from essentially, 1 until 5 a.m., just constantly being bombarded with something. I was really close to where the mess hall in quotations was, and I'm hearing like the coolers opening, and you can hear the squeaky plastic, like, the hinges, but they're latched, like they're getting unpopped. The latch is getting popped. The lids are opening as slow as possible. So it's not, a raccoon that's just going head first in trying to get something and run off. Like it's deliberately trying to be quiet. It's really close to me. Look out, no light, don't see anything. Hit it with the light, nothing either. There's a trailer that they bring that they pack all their gear into, and it has a side door. And the same thing, like the swing open metal latch, and then the door opening just like as slow as possible to be as quiet as it can. Can't see anything. So that was the entire night. It was nonstop. By the time I went to bed, it had to be like 5:30, maybe 6. Woke up the next morning, and 2 other researchers, very experienced and seasoned researchers, found potential prints that maybe were 500 yards away from where the mess hall was. And other people in the camp that had audio recorders were also picking up these sounds without knowing that I had done anything to like try to bring a response in. I deliberately didn't tell anyone but her because I wanted her to be able to know the time, like, hey, 1:30 hits, I'm going to do this. We'll see what happens. And the next morning, everybody's coming in with info. So that was the first night. Kind of crazy. The second night, we go to a different location. She's like, I want you to do whatever you did the night before. We had a ton of activity. There's a lot of recorded evidence of it. She's like, you go out and do whatever you want to do. One of the things that I do as soon as I get to a spot, I always put my headphones on because I've noticed that as soon as you shut your car door, you start hearing like scattering. You start hearing like potential communication. It's almost like something's paying attention to the vehicles pulling in and going, okay, they're getting out. Let everybody else know. So I had heard some scuffles like back in the woods. It was like, okay, this is odd. We were by a river, and there's a rock bluff that's like, I would say like 90 feet tall, pretty tall. We went down by the river. I listened in the headphones and was getting very, very, very faint samurai chatter, like the garbled wah, 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 wah. But it was so far away that I could barely hear it. So I was like, okay, it's probably a good time. Maybe let's try something here. So same thing, in quotations, made a phone call, separated from a group. There's like 10 people sitting around a fire, no electronics, a couple recorders spaced out far away just to pick up ambient, like, you know, if there's a knock or a crunch of a branch or whatever. Make the phone call and immediately start hearing a lot of movement off to my right in my headphones, and maybe like 60, 70 yards away past a tree line. Heard that, waited a couple seconds, made another call, and I'm looking down the line and I see two sets of glowing eyes, self-illuminated. There's the only light is a small, tiny fire, like the smallest fire possible, and it's well down the trail from where I was standing. So I see two sets of self-illuminated eye shine, and they look like they're doing the classic, I'm peeking out from behind a tree to see what's going on. So I'm watching the set, and it's like the lower set is maybe 4 feet off the ground, and then the second set is maybe 1.5 feet above that. And I'm watching them blink, and I'm noticing that they keep darting in and out from the tree. So I watched that, did another call. There was another group that had walked off to try to see if they could find footprints and stuff. They were on their way back, but they were still kind of far away. So made another call, no reaction, still seeing the illuminated eye shine. One went from, let's say, 6 feet up like another 2.5 feet, like, you know, way taller than what it should be. And they're large. They're like the size of, I would say, is it a walnut that's green and then it turns brown and it's really gross and you step on them? Like pretty large eye shine and very, very, very tall. So I go get the director and her cousin. I think it's her cousin. I feel bad if I'm wrong. I'm sorry if you're here, if you're going to listen to this. You know who you are. I go get them. I say, hey, can you put these headphones on and just kind of listen around? The telephone call takes a lot from me physically. It's very draining because of some stuff that I have to do with it. So make a phone call. She's got the headphones on. They're maybe 50 feet behind me, and I hear the director go, whoa, like really loud. I turn around, and she takes the headphones off, and she's like, I just heard the word boom, but really low vocal registration and very, very loud, but not close. So something in the area, from the best thing that she could describe, it sounded like a super deep voice saying boom and drawn out. So that happens. And her, you know, antennas are going up. She's like, okay, we've got something here. The group that had went off to track was on their way back now. So they're within 100 yards from us. As they're walking up, they say, hey, we just got 2 really low growls. This group was 4 guys. One is an active duty police officer who is a super killer tracker. He's a serious researcher. The other 2 guys, there's 2 guys that I believe they were both Marines. They're local to the area to an extent. But I mean, all these guys are like super credible witnesses and like experiencers. And then the other guy, he has FLIR, night vision, all this stuff with him. He's constantly checking. So they're hearing growls. We're getting this like boom sound. And I'm standing there and I start hearing like movement coming through the trees. So they get close and they're like, what's going on? And I'm like, hey, I just did this thing, like, just so you guys kind of know. And as I'm telling them this, we start hearing like a bulldozer just barreling through the trees at us. And we're really, really isolated at this point. Like, there's a road out, but that road out is not a short drive, and it's certainly not a short walk or run. We're all standing essentially in a row looking into the woods at this point, and whatever it is just like beelining it straight towards us. And it sounds like, I'm not kidding, like a bulldozer just smashing through the trees. We hear two smaller movements off to the left, which turned out to be armadillos. Whatever this huge crazy sound was, it stopped just past the tree line, and we couldn't see anything. There's no underbrush burning. It's really, really thick. It's hard to walk into that portion of the woods just because of how dense it is. And everybody's paying attention at this point because it's so loud. We're like, what is going on? We hit it with white light. We hit it with green light. We hit it with red light. We had thermal, FLIR, and night vision. Two of those are basically the same thing. And no one was picking up anything. The only evidence we have were the eyewitnesses that were right there, and then the recordings from two recorders that picked these things up like very, very clearly. That was the second night, and that was the first thing of the second night. I don't know if you have questions, let me know.
That sounds, well, I mean, so we don't know exactly what it is that was done, but it sounds like the response was pretty unique for a BFRO expedition.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like I said, I don't want to go into details on this instrument that I use.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff that can happen with it that's not exactly the most invited. It took me a good 5 years to learn how to use this thing correctly. And that was with guidance from, we'll just say, 2 tribe members. Very fortunate to be connected to a lot of people all over the world from very different walks of life. These 2 guys said, hey, you should try this in some of your stuff and see what happens. But here's the deal. Like, we'll make the first one for you. If you lose it, it's very bad luck. Don't lose it. I lost it and have had pretty bad luck since. That's a whole nother episode. But this thing, I mean, like I said, every single time I use it, and the training that went into it, the response from a lot of different things is always very, very high and very, very, very directly pointed. It's not like a residual response for something else. It's like, if I go out and use this thing, whatever's picking it up and responding knows the intent, knows what I'm doing, knows what I'm using to an extent. And it's kind of like, they're like, okay, we've heard this before. We'll come see what's going on. So yeah, this stuff, as far as I know, they've never had a reaction like this in the BFRO on an expedition. That same night, we went to another location that was kind of close, just to and it's a hot spot. We were like, okay, this area is pretty near where we are. Let's just go check it out. I do the same thing, isolated from the rest of the group. And within 10 minutes, we get a very odd light that's just kind of floating above a set of trees, right? So everybody's like watching this thing, and they're looking at me because they're like, you're the UFO guy. What is this? So the scientific mind goes, okay, what's this light? What's causing it? Where's the source? How do we, debunk it to where we know for a fact that it's a stationary light that is man-made and just beaming through in an odd angle or whatever. So I start going through the checklist, and I'm noticing that this thing is moving around, and it's not moving a couple inches. It's moving feet left to the right, up, down. It's getting much brighter. So we start pointing lights at it, which is a thing that happens in UFO research. We hit it with 2 green lasers, a floodlight, some super bright pointed lights, and then a floodlight from a guy's truck. And every single time we hit this thing with a light, it reacts. So it moves away from the light. It gets dimmer. It gets brighter. It moves up or down, or it starts to kind of wobble in a weird way. At this point, there's about, I think it was like 17 people that were standing there all watching the same exact thing. This being 2 of these people being the director and this police officer. And he's like, what is going on? He's like, I've never seen this stuff. And this dude, I mean, he researches a lot. He's very, very, very tied in with the community. And from what I was told, he's completely shocked at this point. So the director and him and a couple other people go off in a truck to try to find the source of this light. They can't do it. They can't find it. It's far enough away to where we wouldn't see a pole below it, like supporting it, and maybe it's just, like moving the pole back and forth, or it's leaves on a tree, like disrupting the light. They can't find the source. We're still sitting there seeing the same exact thing. Another group goes off in the opposite direction, and they're seeing the same light from a different location about a mile away, right where we are. So there's now 3 groups that are experiencing this object from 3 different locations, and the general consensus is it's not man-made, it's not a light on a pole, it's not a light in the tree, it's literally just this ball hovering above this tree set. So one of the guys that's kind of local to the area was like, we got to go see what this thing is. We're standing directly in front of us is a huge field, like maybe a football field and a half long. He's like, we got to go. Everybody's like, no, don't go. I'm like, we should probably go out there. So I'll never forget this. This is one of my favorite things that's ever happened on any type of research thing like this. He looks at me and he's like, we got to walk out there. Curious minds got to know. And I was like, that's it. We're gunning it. So him and I go off against everybody else's better judgment, and we walk as close up to this thing as we can get. Unfortunately, we were stopped by a property line fence and private property. But we were close enough to where this thing's 50 yards from us, and we're just seeing this ball maybe 10 feet above like 100-foot tree, and this thing is just moving. And we start hitting it with lights, and the same thing. It's just kind of like moving in and out. It's getting brighter. It's getting dimmer. It's changing size at this point. So the light seems like when it's getting brighter, the object is actually growing and then going back to a smaller footprint in the sky, let's say. We watch it for a good 10 minutes. We walk back through this field. This field, too, I mean, the grass is like taller than we are. And at this point, everybody's been watching it for like an hour and a half. So it's like, okay, well, that was cool. What do we do next? So we go back to, everybody decides it's time to leave. We go back to the camp. I got bombarded with the worst fear, and like, I don't know how to explain how scared I was as soon as we got back to the camp. Was totally fine during both of these other experiences. Have had many experiences that are close to that one with a long list of things that, I could go into detail about, but it takes a lot of time to explain. So yeah, never really scared in the woods, not really scared in general. It's very hard to shake me. We go back to the camp, and I'm just like terrified. Like I feel legitimately like something is coming to eat me that's much larger and much stronger than I am and much scarier. and as mean as possible. Just like sheer and total terror is the only way that I can explain it. I had made a comment to her. I was like, hey, like, I'm feeling pretty off right now. I don't know what it is. I just want you to know. So she took note, kind of, said, okay, we'll check, make sure you're here later on. And this feeling was all night long. We got back to the camp at about, I want to say 1 a.m. at that point. I didn't go to bed until the next morning at 7 a.m. is finally around the time that I fell asleep, because I was just absolutely terrified. I'm hearing stuff moving in the tree line. Like, I feel like something's all around me, just like bombarding me with like terror. It was so bad that I put a white light on my truck that's magnetic, and that thing stayed on the entire time, because that was like the only thing that I could do, that I thought, to keep something from just like popping out and grabbing me. So yeah, that was the second thing that happened that night. And then me just being like in my own personal horror movie for the rest of the evening while everyone else is completely fine. I will say cause and effect is definitely a thing for that. So whatever I did was like, you're a jerk, now we get to mess with you, or you made contact with us, we're going to contact with you and see how it goes. So yeah, that was the first 2 nights on the expedition. And this is the first BFRO expedition I've ever went on.
My goodness, that's some really, really intense stuff. And so I'm just going to ask questions, and you can go ahead. Decline to answer because you're the one that would potentially get in trouble. So at the end of the expedition, what was there? Was there a discussion like, hey, we shouldn't do this again, or maybe this is awesome for more people to start doing?
The general consensus was, if I'm there, we'll run it like we did. Mm-hmm. If I'm not there, they're not comfortable with doing the same thing. I tried to explain to them. I didn't explain directly to the entire group because I don't want everyone to know what I'm doing, partially because I don't want someone to take a method of mine but do it wrong and have the wrong reaction. And just so we're very clear, that is a very large possibility. I'm super cryptic, or like very, very vague in many, many ways when it comes to stuff like this, but it's because I don't want someone hearing an interview or hearing about it and going, I can do that, and then something spooky comes knocking on their door and they're like, holy crap, it's that guy's fault. So the general consensus was, if you're here, we're going to do this again. If you're not, we'll just do what we normally do.
But you being the one who does it, you're the one who had to deal with the side effects.
Yeah. And that's, right. I will say too, like I said, I've had a lot of stuff that I've experienced that's pretty crazy. Not clinically crazy or diagnosed crazy. It just comes with, there's different realms of research, and there's different realms that you can get into with, especially in ufology and UFO research. My feeling was, why not go as crazy or as weird as possible? I'm only going to live once. I might as well try to experience everything I possibly can before, I kick the bucket. And then I feel like I can say, I had a pretty wild life. A lot of really crazy stuff that I can't explain and probably will never be able to explain happened. Here's the data I collected. You can try it someday if you want or not. So yeah, I'm the one that directly gets, I usually get, if it's something that's coming to be like malicious to an extent, I get bombarded with it. I do certain things to protect myself from that. And it does help a lot, but it doesn't stop all the interference or all the stuff that comes in. So short answer, yes. Long answer, it's welcomed because I'm pushing the buttons and something's going to cause and effect. It's going to push those buttons back.
Yeah, it's an interesting pattern that I've started to notice in, I guess, also the field of ufology besides Bigfoot. And so I'll just kind of rattle some off. So you've talked to Chris Reinhardt, who is talking about the 40 hertz tuning fork, which you can listen to that episode for entertainment purposes only. Let's see, gentlemen. Well, you've got Kumbo has always talked about the shofar horn. That would be also same disclaimer. You also have in the ufology community the dog whistle. I believe this has been in the last year where they produce some kind of tone and it brings things down from the sky. That's just very interesting how, and maybe this has always been happening, but it's something I've noticed that more and more people are starting to do these things that are getting responses from what it is. We're not sure, but it's something that we can't explain, and it's very, very interesting that it is seeming to happen more and more. I'm not quite sure.
I listen to you can't see me, but I'm smiling ear to ear when the 40 hertz thing comes up. I listened to that episode. I've heard him on a couple other interviews as well, and my telephone beams out on the low end at a little under 40 hertz. But it's really, really close right there. And it's enough to where after hearing his interviews, I'm like, okay, this is a thing. Like this tone or this frequency is very key to certain aspects of research. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned him. That 40 hertz thing, it's been a thing in ufology for a really long time, kind of explained in some other ways. But that's a big one. The shofar horn, is that correct? Am I saying that correctly? I hope so.
Yeah, I think it's shofar horn, but I'm sure different people will say it. Yeah.
Yeah. So my only quarrel with that, and this goes along with like that people call it like the Aztec death whistle and everything. I don't discredit people using that, and I never will, but I highly, highly, highly suggest, and I do this every single time I talk to someone, unless you are trained very directly by whatever tribe or religious sect or whatever, magic cult, whatever, unless you're trained directly by someone who knows exactly what that instrument or those instruments call or conjure up, do not do it. I see it all the time. People do it in ghost hunting. They're starting to do it more in Bigfoot research. They do it in ufology. And the thing for me is, it's not, you're culturally appropriating, not in a crappy way that you're like just unaware, but it's more so all of those things were designed for a very, very strict and very pointed result. Unless you're trained correctly, it's really not a good idea. And the reason being is because you could conjure or contact or call something that you're not supposed to and unwillingly know that it's happening just because you made this sound. So it's like any instrumentation from a tribe or a religious sect, unless you get like the full back history, I highly discourage people from doing that. It's like walking into an open field in the middle of the night and clapping 3 times or whistling in the woods. Native American tales talk about this stuff constantly. I mean, at one point, like there's a tribe somewhere that said they could walk into a field, clap 3 times, and open a portal. It's the same idea. I really discourage people from using instruments from a religious sect or tribe just because you have no clue what you're calling forward. It's hard to tell people that, and most people aren't receptive, but I have seen it. I've told people, and I've seen them be like, oh crap, I didn't think of that, and they immediately stop. I've also physically seen people blow different wood instruments or horns and had very direct and scary reaction to that one sound almost immediately. And it takes a lot to get those things away. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, that's some pretty scary stuff. I mean, you can imagine whatever that is. That's, you probably don't want to deal with it. If there was, well, let's say the property line wasn't there when you guys walked into the field, what would have happened, do you think?
We would have walked to the tree. I would have probably tried to climb the tree. At this point in my life, like, if there's something coming in, like, I want to make as much contact as possible. And that's my personal thing. It's like I said, like, I might as well go as far out as I can to say, hey, look, like, I wanted to do this. I was curious. I had an experience as a result of it. Jot it down. Cool. That was sweet. If that property line wasn't there, this gentleman and I, we would have walked straight up to the tree, and I would almost assume that he would probably have climbed the tree as well. What would have potentially happened, though, is I'm unable to answer that, because no one knows what these entities or beings or ships or whatever you want to call it, no one knows what they're going to do ever. There's not a documented case in ufology where someone's had contact with a ship that I know of, at least, or a craft, and they knew exactly what was going to happen. So it's really hard. It's almost impossible to tell. But we would have definitely walked out and probably got as close as possible.
That's wild. So after doing this first BFRO expedition, is this something that you might consider doing again, or how are your feelings towards that expedition?
Oh yeah, 100%. I went on another one. I believe I'm signed up for a couple more. I'll be in the LBL. I want to say in September or October. I can't remember. Eastern Missouri for another BFRO expedition, and the Ozark Mountain Bigfoot Conference. I'll be out there just kind of hanging out. And then there's another one in Nashville, Indiana, which is really close to where I'm from. I'll be out at that one. The goal is to go to as much stuff as I can. It's really cool for me to come from kind of the UFO realm into this and use some of the techniques that I've used or developed, and to have reactions and not alone with multiple people that can verify. The thing is too, is like, as I'm going on these things, it's just more data to prove. It's more documentation. It's more eyewitnesses. It's more experiencers that are able to say, I was right there exactly when this happened. I 1000% vouch, and so were these other people, and they'll all do the same thing. So yes, the goal is to go. I'm full bore at this point. Like, if I could not work and just do research, I would totally do that nonstop. If I could go to every conference in the country, I would probably.
That's wild. Have you talked to? Have you met Marsha at all yet?
No.
That would be really cool. I think you guys would have a fun conversation. Marsha with BFRO.
Where's she located?
I don't know. I know that she gets to a lot of different expeditions. I think, I've
heard multiple people talk about her. Yeah, the same thing with the open invite to the research area. Like, the more I can collaborate, the more info that I can share, and the more techniques that I can, like, help implement or whatever. Like, I'm all for having contact with pretty much anyone. I'll all information is good information, whether it's good or bad. It still propels, my research personally to the end goal. So yeah, I definitely would be interesting in connecting with her.
It would be interesting if people from the area kept going to the expedition area and to see if there were like residual effects from what happened during that expedition.
So I will say this, the light experience that we had, there was another gentleman that lives really close. He went out a week later at the same exact spot and saw the same light, but not in the same location. It was like the same field, but farther back towards the hill line. And what's really interesting, this is where it got cool for me. So he took everybody's location from the first night and plotted those on a map. Very interesting to me is the fact that it was almost a perfect triangle where everyone was viewing this thing from. So he plotted those locations. He went back a week later, saw the same exact light, and plotted his location, and was like, yeah, it's the same thing. It's just in a different area of this field. Same thing, no source, no light on a pole, no. It wasn't a drone. I know what a drone sounds like. I have 2 drones. It wasn't any type of man-made aircraft. But yeah, so he checked these. I was able to go back later. In the UFO realm, we use nonlinear radar to check for essentially craft. There are these little sensors all over the world at this point, and every state has multiple ones of them. The info is very easy to find. You just have to know exactly where to look. I can share some of that if you want. But I was able to go back later and find all of these sensors picked up the same movement on 2 separate occasions right where we were standing. What's also interesting was, and Miguel just did this interview maybe a month ago, where we were, there's another spot that's miles away that's a family farm where they have pretty regular Bigfoot contact. And he interviewed a guy that said, yeah, we had multiple cases of like really close contact with Bigfoot on our farm while the BFRO was doing their expedition miles away. What we didn't know was that there was no contact between us and that farm. So the group had no clue that guy was there. All of this info came up later on. And the guy was like, I didn't know that they were there when they were doing it, but the timeline was the exact same. So now the scientific mind says we need basically 3 points to confirm this. And we're at this point, we're at like 5 now, multiple sensors, 2 separate locations having very close to the same experiences. And then other people now laying in like, yeah, I had the same thing here. So it's really cool to see that.
That is extremely cool, though. That is incredible. You also, when we were talking before the interview, you mentioned that you're starting to get into creating some prototype technology that might go hand in hand with Bigfoot research. Is that something you can share about as well?
Yeah, for sure. I won't divulge all the secrets just because it is still prototype stage, and I want these things to be perfect. So yeah, one of the things that I'm working on is everyone talks about cameras, trail cams, game cams, whatever, infrared security cameras, all of this stuff. The one thing that seems to be a constant is that no matter where the camera is, these creatures or Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever, know immediately. So they're either and the general consensus is they can see IR, they can see infrared, which makes sense. My thought is, okay, how do we separate the camera from the other stuff? How do we separate the batteries? That it's well documented that bears can, I think it's the alkaline in batteries. That's why they try to eat game cameras, because they're like, I want to get this alkaline. So you look at it from a biological standpoint, if bears can smell alkaline in a battery that's in a plastic case that's usually sealed from the weather, anything else that's mildly intelligent or has extra sensory, like, abilities to pick up on stuff, they're going to be able to do the same thing. So the thought is we separate the camera from every sensor, every battery pack by a long distance, but still make it to where that camera will pick up whatever those sensors are seeing. And that's where it gets technical, and I don't want to divulge the secret, because if it works the way that I anticipate it working, it's almost foolproof. We're doing it to where, essentially I'm isolating everything from the elements plus smell, like things are getting buried, like trying very, very hard to get photographic or video evidence of something walking through the area, but not being able to essentially know exactly where that camera is. There's a lot of tech that goes into it, and there's a lot of trial and error, but if it works the way that I hope it will, it could be a very large game changer for, surveillance to an extent. So yeah, that's like one of them. Working on different ways to measure, like, sound wave of footprints too, or steps, essentially. People use like the, I can't remember what it's called. It's like the song recorder. It's like a device that this company makes that's like a super precise microphone that listens for whatever.
It's wildlife acoustics.
That's it. Yeah. So taking that, but taking a microphone that's really, really sensitive and then programming the microphone to only pick up a specific sound made by a specific weight animal in a specific location. So trying to like get rid of all the extra stuff that comes with electronics and saying, okay, look, like we can measure in these parameters audibly. Why don't we just measure for this 1,000-pound footprint or footstep in the woods, that, and then also trying to develop some cost-effective and pretty easy to get a hold of seismic measurements that measure, between 500 pounds and 1,500 pounds. I don't know a single thing in Welden Springs in my area other than maybe a bear that would trip a sensor like that. So, and the other thing too is trying to do all this stuff where it's financially within the means of, most of the middle class. If you're buying tech, if you're buying a night vision scope that's $4,000, you could potentially buy a camera, if it works, that takes photos and gets really hard evidence for a fraction of that,
Man, that's a really good point. I bet you could have a really cool conversation with Doug Highcheck. I don't know if you've ever talked to him.
No, I really want to. Some of his stuff that I've read and some of the stuff that he's implemented it's fascinating. My thing too is like, collaborative efforts to try to like test these things in different areas is really, really important. But the data collection is the most important. And my stuff, like, I've kind of talked about this to some other people. Like, I won't send a photo unless it's encrypted or unless I know for a fact that someone can't steal the photo and wipe it. Technology is wild right now. There's a lot of stuff that happens with your cell phone and files being sent back and forth, or your computer and files being sent back and forth. I personally, all of my photos and all of my video, they get uploaded to an air-gapped computer that's not connected to a network, solely because I have heard horror stories of people having like irrefutable evidence video, and they upload it, they email it to someone, and then they go to check their camera, or not their camera, their computer or the file, and the file's corrupted. To me, and this is conspiracy, but it's pretty well documented that it's happening. To me, if you're trying to prove something and you put it out there in the open via a network, it's not hard to backtrace where that came from and then backdoor into the computer and erase that file or corrupt that file to where it's no longer useful. And I've heard this hundreds of times now. So for me, I was like, I need an air-gapped computer that's not connected to a network. If I'm going to send you photos, you're literally going to get an encrypted SD card or a flash drive, and that's the only way. And we'll know if it gets stopped in the mail. It's like there's all these things that have constantly been happening tech-wise when people come up with the craziest evidence, and they're like, the file was corrupted. It was fine on my phone. It was fine on my camera. It was fine on my laptop. I took it home. I sent it to someone, and they're all corrupted.
My goodness. Oh, dude, is that like I'm not familiar with that technology. Is it like in Battlestar Galactica when the computers weren't hooked up to the network type deal?
Pretty much, yeah. So, yeah. I mean, there's probably a 5-year-old that's into hacking that knows more about computers than I do that could, say, who knows, like his dad works for the FBI or the CIA or the whatever. And he's like, hey, buddy, I want you to break into this computer and corrupt this file so this guy can't prove that UFOs are real or Bigfoot's real. I mean, anything's really possible now. And especially with AI too, like I'm starting to see things in the ufology realm where there's images and they're totally AI. So now it's like, oh man, if we have like hard evidence, like you have to do everything possible to protect it from the wrong people taking it. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. Have you ever considered, how there's certain areas in the U.S. where they're known for high strangeness, like a lot of it? Have you ever considered taking the telephone to areas like that and seeing what happens?
Yeah. It's that there's this really cool thing called the 37th parallel that kind of connects all the weird stuff.
Right.
I've followed the line on a couple things, and that telephone, like I said, like the response is absolutely crazy. It's almost every single time. People will probably be like, oh, that's not true or whatever. But, for me, like, if you don't believe it, come out and I'll show you, and you make your own, you come to your own decision on whether or not the phenomena is real. But yeah, I've taken it to a couple spots. On the first BFRO expedition, I did it in front of the director, and she was like, man, that thing completely changes the entire feeling of the area. She's like, I've never seen this. I've never heard of this thing. It's wild that it's even doing what it's doing. But having someone that's that high up in what most people consider like a pretty substantial organization within Bigfoot research, like having her be like, yeah, that thing is legit, is really, really cool. But yeah, I use it constantly. I use it at my house. Like, I mean, I have stuff that comes in all the time. It's just part of contact at this point. It's cool too, because I'll hear about a report and go out and maybe look at something and be like, oh yeah, this report was here, I'm going to try it, and then have a response almost immediately. I think the last interview I told you, like, my biggest thing is like intent. Like if you go out and like you want to have experiences, it all boils down to what your intent is. If your intent is to capture images of something, like, you're probably not going to get the best result. If you're pure in your intent and you're like, hey, look, like I just want to understand more, I want to experience more, if you put that out there, who knows, I mean, the world is wild. Pretty much anything can happen when your mind is set on something. So yes, the telephone, I mean, it's wild. Like, I use it constantly, and it's almost every single spot I've ever taken it to. It's like, oh, yep, here we go. Like, the door's open, the gate's open, the portal's open. Let's see what happens. The second BFRO expedition I went on, very interesting. It was on native land, and it did not work there, which was super, super weird for me. We did have some contact with some stuff, some experiences, but it was very interesting that this particular thing that I'm using had essentially no effect on native land and guarded native land that's, open to the public, but obviously there's a deep connection with the earth and, the flora and fauna. So it was really interesting that happened, but everywhere else, totally fine.
It's fascinating stuff. It'd be interesting to see where this all leads, because I'm sure that there are people talking in that organization. It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, who knows what the future will bring in this topic over the next few years. It's very cool to be following along with it. But my goodness, Levi, I want to make sure that, well, first, we've had a fantastic conversation today, but I want to make sure that if there's anything that you want to make sure that people are aware of, I know you said you're starting to get a YouTube channel together, things like that. Feel free to share if there's anything that you want to at this time.
Yeah, like I said earlier on, like my whole goal is to just keep pushing and keep having more and more people, to collaborate with or like share info with. I see a lot of like back and forth weird bickering in Bigfoot research. And from an outsider standpoint, essentially, it's really, really sad. Like people try to discredit you like from their couch in every way possible. Everybody needs to be more accepting. Everybody needs to understand that there are no experts in this field, regardless of what everyone says. And everyone needs to understand, too, that different people experience different things, sometimes within the same location. This happens a lot in ufology. It's well documented. Two people can be standing right next to each other. One person can see a pill-shaped craft. The person to the left of them could see a disc or a black triangle. Everyone's experiences are their own, and they're valid unless they're proven to be hoaxed. So stop fighting with each other. It's absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't matter if you don't like one research company or you don't like one researcher, whatever. It makes more sense for all of us to come together collectively and say, here's the evidence we have. Let's work together to make irrefutable proof of what's happening to everybody all over the world at this point. My role, like North American Research Center of Paraufology, like the goal with that was to take all the different types of research that, from the paranormal to UFO to Bigfoot to whatever, like, try to pull from everything to try to get an explanation. Jacques Vallée is one of the undisputed kings in ufology research. I mean, this guy is literally like the top tier. He very directly said, and I fully believe this, and this is part of the reason that I've, started this organization and doing this research this way. He said all of it is connected, and I fully believe that. I don't think there's any disconnect regardless of whatever it is. I think people are going to go out, people are going to do research, people are going to have experiences, and those experiences or those things may be specific to that person and totally different for someone else. But the goal is to understand where it's all coming from. So doing that as a paraufologist, I just want to be like, I'm going to pull from everything. Like, there's no holds bar at this point. It's 2025. If I see a ghost and a UFO and a Yowie and Chupacabra at the same time, and I have enough time to talk to all of them, I'm going to be like, hey, are you guys from the same thing? Yes or no? And if they're like, yeah, we are, we're all the same, cool. It's whatever. But yeah, just trying to pull from every way possible and every research point possible to get and gather definitive proof to share with as many people as I can. You know, with the YouTube and everything, the goal's not really to try to like blow up and make it a thing. I'm just going to upload video. That's the thing. Like forward camera, rear camera, not a lot of communication from me, like monologue wise. It's going to be me out in the woods on an expedition, not on an expedition, you know, static camera stuff. This is the evidence I've gathered. Please look through it, watch it, and go from there. Yeah, that's like the basis of all of it.
I think that's a fantastic idea. I can't wait to see where that goes. But Levi, thank you so much for coming on the show again, and we'll definitely be in touch regarding what happens in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, you know, maybe one day we can cross paths and I can spook you out a little bit with some stuff or whatever. But yeah, anybody too, like I said, if you're interested in contact or questions, whatever, I'm an open book. There's no reason for me to hide or harbor or hold any info whatsoever. I'll pass the email and contact info to you. And, you know, if you've got questions, get a hold of me. Pretty easy to talk to. Always down to, you know, share my side.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Levi.
Yeah, thank you.
Just want to take a minute to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Levi's story isn't just another account of strange structures or glowing eyes in the woods. It's a warning that sometimes when you try to reach out, something might reach back. So huge thank you to Levi for returning and sharing what's easily one of the most intense experiences we've ever heard from this area of Missouri. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new episodes, and share this one with a friend who's into Sasquatch. Just a weird Missouri mystery. If you're listening to the channel on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to follow the show. We'd be grateful if you leave a 5-star positive review. It really helps others find the stories that we're sharing there. And hey, if you've ever had an encounter, especially in Missouri, Indiana, or anywhere near the Ozarks, please email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your story. Thanks again for being part of the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.